From side control, first thing we talked about is making sure that you get your frame all the way deep into the hip. And then we're going to try to connect our knee and elbow with this near side knee. There's a couple of methods. You want to make sure that it's nice and tight near the ribs, and you can use this like a pendulum to help work that knee in. Once you have this elbow knee connection, especially if Fredo has a tight cross face or he has his hands connected, you can use your back to help push away and straighten it to escape side control. And either free this and get into guard, or I don't know, maybe triangle.
Yeah.
Whatever you want, you're out of side control. A common reaction from here, if you are working this, is that your partner is going to sit to the hip. When they sit to their hip, there's different, you can no longer get your knee through and get your knee and elbow connected, so there'll be a different escape. Remember guys, don't be an idiot and hold on to, sit into this position while trying to maintain your cross face. You're gonna give up something, and it's gonna be that cross face. Or you'll have bad hip connection, you can work the same escape we just went over. If they are sitting to the hip like this, what we did is we worked using, remember, always keeping this inside frame nice and tight to the hip. What we're going to do is we're going to lift Fredo and put them into my lap by bridging here, letting this leg go through, and pushing Fredo into my lap with the arm on the waist. There is two ways: the dummy sweep, which does not happen most of the time by turning and coming through. Most of the time what happens is when you try to push, they will post here. If they are posting, what we're going to do is we're going to go behind them. We're going to take this arm inside. Now we can start working things back. All right. Is that it for side control? Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Unless he comes back.
What?
Once you drop him in your lap and he tries to come back to regular side control, then your knee's already on the inside.
Oh yes, I forgot to say that, yeah. So if you're here and you're working to get Fredo into your lap and you're trying to go through, and let's say instead Fredo is wise to this and he doesn't want me to come through, he can also go back into side control, of which he is. If we kept our tight frame, we'll be able to get our knee and elbow connection and go back to the first. So maintain, that's why your frame is so important. You notice all three of those, we did not move that frame. The second week we did defense from turtling position. All right, so from your turtle position, your partner is going to have a seatbelt grip. We're going to first create our angle. So I'm going to try to get my near side hand wedged between our thighs and our knees. So I'm going to start turning my feet to get my hand as a wedge. I will never reach in to try to collect his leg. I will offer my arm up into a crucifix and or lots of terrible things such as arm bars and all of that. So do never reach inside to grab the far side leg. You want to try to take the hand inside to create a wedge. With this wedge, what we're going to do is we're going to do our best to take our inside hand and come up to the back of the far side hip. So there's a couple ways you can do that. You can push the weight forward and work to get the hand up. If Fredo just posts his hands and he isn't wizarding, we're just going to pop out the back and start working to collect his back. And look, if you want to do a continuous drill, well, now you're there too. If your partner is hip and wise, they will whizzer. When he tried to do this escape, so I cut my angle, I try to come up to the far hip, and Fredo stops me from being able to escape out the back. We have a couple options from here. The first option we can go through is you can lift your leg up, come through, and get back to close guard, or a guard of some sort. Just coming straight from the whizzer. There's also, what you can do is you can take your opposite hand, club the head, and work to get into a front headlock position. Thank you. Sorry guys. And the last one from turtle is when your partner is coming through, and let's say you're trying to create your wedge, but you really can't get the arm to go very far, or like his hip is just glued to yours and you can't create your wedge. What we are going to do is we're going to do a rolling back kick. So if I start rolling here inside, it's very common that Fredo will try to take and roll my back. And if I did this wrong, he would be able to take my back and put me in the position. However, I am baiting him to do that move, that rolling back kick. with baiting Fredo to do this roll, I'm trying to roll with my far side shoulder in. So as he tries to jump over, I'm going to take a perpendicular angle, so make sure that you are not in line with him, that you are facing the opposite direction he is with your hips. And from here, we're going to keep our hips down onto the mat. If I lift my hips up, Fredo can use his positioning to get under and control the back position. So from here, I'm going to continue to keep my back glued to the mats, and I'm going to use my shoulders to be going into Fredo. So there is pressure on his chest as I'm doing this move. I'm not just hanging out here and alleviating the pressure. You want to have that pressure to make your partner uncomfortable. Now, to get out of this position, what we're going to do is we're going to be reaching for this leg right here. If it's up, it's very easy to grab and connect here to be able to reach across the far side hip or the knee, to be able to pressure in with your shoulder to be able to get your positioning. However, sometimes that knee is not going to be up, it's going to be down. And when it is down, I'm not just going to reach and try to grab it here. If I do, Fredo now has the ability to grab and collect my arm and start working arm bars and or getting me into a crucifix position. I do not want to allow him, I do not want to allow him this opportunity. So when his leg is down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach under the leg to grab it through. So not over, but under to collect and grab. When I'm turning, guys, remember, I'm not lifting my hips this way. I'm thinking about collecting the arm this way. So you notice my hips are still really low and he can't get under me. And it's a lot of pressure into the ribs. So don't lift your hips up and bridge. You're trying to keep and maintain your positioning of your hips low until you reach across the far side of the hip, and it's hard for him to get his hips under yours. Okay, was that it for turtle? All right, now into last week. We were doing the mount positioning for steeping. So let's turn sideways. Perfect. So the first thing we discussed is creating a frame with our inside hands. So it doesn't matter which way you do it. I'm going to do it to Fredo's right arm with my right arm. So I'm going to take it's almost like a lat bar. My lat bar arm is coming across Fredo's hip, and I'm creating a frame with my opposite side here. When I do this, I'm going to think about pushing with my elbow Fredo's leg inside. So when I'm here, I'm going to lift and push. And as I do, I collect my bottom leg inside. Once I'm here, I'm going to turn to my hip and I'm going to use my inside leg to grab Fredo's leg out. If I use this leg here, it gives him great position to control my hips and start working his pass. So we do not want to control with our inside leg, rather we want to control with our outside leg, so it creates more pressure and torque on Fredo's leg. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to work to get our leg back in. So once I'm here, I'm going to just sneak the leg inside. And if Fredo tries to reach up, I can use my elbow to grab and either go into an arm bar or use it just to stop him to go through. Back to mount. Let's see here. Yes, that's not. So we're going to do this again. Another reaction that will commonly happen as you've tried to do this is that Fredo is going to shift his weight and do an S-mounted position. So he's controlling my hips with his knee and the back. Remember guys, if I take this arm and it's not across the hips, as you can see my elbow is close to this far side hip, if this arm at all comes across this way, he will be able to take my back. So it is very important that you make sure you maintain your correct positioning with your frame. If you put your frame into the center of the belly here at all, anywhere that he can just shuck it by, it's very easy for Fredo to take away the space and get better positioning. So make sure you're maintaining a good frame to the opposite hip and pushing away. All right. There's two grips you can do to help get out of this S-mount position. There is pulling onto the back of the calf, which is also analogous to the gi one we did last night. Or since we are in a gi, you can also use an inside grip onto the inside of the knee. Either way is good. So I'll leave that up to you. So how do we get out of this position is we're going to use a forward hip escape. We're going to lower our bottom leg out nice and high, and we're now going to use a little bit of a frame and a forward hip escape to get into single leg X position. So we're going to lift, roll, push, and get into a single leg X. And then from here, it's whatever jams you want to do. Arche swap. Don't do it in a gi, guys, unless you agree. Oh yes, and the last thing we did was getting out of the, if somebody has an underhook and a cross face, how to get out of here. So first off, make sure, like, one of the biggest dangers you are in here is if Fredo can walk his elbow up really high, I'm really in danger of a head and arm choke. So always make sure that you are weary of allowing your elbow to come high. Think about always trying to get it low and putting a little bit of pressure towards their own elbow. The first objective I want to do if they have this position is trying to get this hand into Fredo's hip to be able to try to bench press him off. So I need to wiggle this in and get the palm of my hand onto Fredo's hip. Once I'm here, I'm going to get my feet nice and close to my hips, and I'm going to bridge and use the pressure of my hip to push everything all at once as I take my hips. So I'm going to push them this way over this shoulder as I take everything else over that way, like my hips. So we're here, we're going to push, and we're going to get into the single leg X position again. All right, any questions? I think that's it. You ready?
Ready.
Let's go, 1, 2, 3.